innatly.tv. It's 9 p.m. on this 22nd day of June 2022. That's East Coast time. If you're watching it at that time, if you're watching it live, you might be watching it some other time and you're just seeing the recording of the live. But we are welcoming a first-time guest tonight with quite a varied and extensive background. Can't wait to hear more about her. She is standing by in our green room. Our chat room is waiting. We're streaming. We're recording. Let's count it down to Studio 37 Alpha, starting now. Well, good evening. Welcome. Oh, I forgot something. Welcome. This is pjnet.tv. I am Coach Prasick, and I forgot to do something earlier. I'm doing it now. Turning off the ceiling fans. I can do it with my phone. It's cool. Always a pleasure to welcome a first-time guest to our program. This is the place where everyday Christians share their walk with Christ. And we have a lot of ground that we will be covering during the program. And I'd like to introduce you to, if my mouse would work. Where's my mouse? Here it is. Diana Mood comes to us from her castle, palace, palatial facilities in the state of Maryland, I believe. And Diana, welcome. We're glad to have you. I wanted to, there are many things I could say. I'll say them quickly. We won't get to all of them. English as a second language, you're involved in or have been in disabled ministry. I want to hear more about your creative developer stuff. Entrepreneur, writer, speaker, trainer. Gee, that's a lot. But you are also, before we get into all that serious stuff, you are also the recipient of a SELA Award at the Blue Ridge Mountain Christian Writers Conference. Tell us about your experience at the conference this year.
Well, thank you, Mark, for inviting me, and it's just great to be here. And hello to all of you who are tuning in. I'm a first-time official author, and this was the first writers' conference I'd ever been to. And I had been I had submitted my book Enough, Learning to Survive and Thrive in Brokenness, into the memoir category. And lo and behold, I wound up as a finalist. Just kind of unbelievable. So I decided this was a once in a lifetime opportunity, would never come by again, so that I wanted to go to the conference and see if I progressed any further along the running of the authors. So that night, award night, I was sitting up front with the other authors, and I was about in the middle. It took a very long time, and I heard my name when they got the memoirs, and I was second place. And I stood up, and I had to go up these stairs, and I began to cry, and I couldn't stop it. And I got to the stage, and I walked over to the presenter and accepted my award, and I turned to the audience. I'm still crying, no smiling, just crying. And I walked to the other end of the stage and went down the steps, and I stood next to these two wonderful ladies who were co-directors of the whole conference for a professional photographer to take my winner's photo. Well, there you go. Look at me. I don't think I look very happy. But I didn't see that right away. It was next morning. I saw my picture, but I saw everybody else's picture too. And everybody had great big smiles, and they had almost skipped across the stage, and there I was trying not to fall apart and just break down in tears. And and as I went to my seat, I made my way to my seat. I wondered, why in the world did that happen? I mean, this is just a wonderful honor among my peers. And so it took me a couple of days to figure it out, but it finally dawned on me. Most of my life, I've got a very difficult life story, but most of my life I've been overlooked and come up lacking in people's eyes. I've been stereotyped. because I've been overweight off and on over the years, and I've been marginalized. I've been underestimated, and now in front of 600 people, the story of my broken life mattered.
Hmm.
Uh, People had been blessed by reading it. People were inspired, and I was given this coveted award, and I was just. I think I was crying because I was overwhelmed by God's grace as I remembered all of the years of struggle and heartache and brokenness. Um, Walking across that stage in tears was a real healing moment for me. And I'm not ashamed that I was crying. I'm a little disappointed in the picture. I was going to use it for all my PR spreads on Facebook and everything. And here I am, quivering lips. And anyway, that was my introduction to awards at writers' conferences.
Well, and it's not because you're camera shy. You've got quite a bit of several hours in public speaking venues and such. And as I was going down your list of credentials and accomplishments, you did not list in here about sufferer and overcomer of brokenness, but that is the case.
That's correct. Before, right before the book came out, when Deb Haggerty, my publisher at Elk Lake, pushed the it was right as she was pushing the Amazon button to go ahead. I spoke to my pastor. I wanted to get his opinion before it came out. I said, Pastor Gary, what do you think? Well, he leaned forward over his desk and he looked at me right in the eye and he said, Diana, it's like you're standing naked on Times Square. I said, what? He said, it's like you're standing naked on Times Square. Wow. I mean, that wasn't what I expected to hear. I was mortified. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, well, you've just let it all hang out. You've been honest. You've been real. You've been transparent. There aren't any cliches. You've just said it the way it is. And well, I walked out of his office and I thought, gee whiz, I mean, there's 2,000 people, 2,000 residents on this campus and 1,000 employees. And the thought of everybody reading it and wondering what they were going to think about me almost paralyzed me. So I hid in my friend's apartment for a week because I didn't want to see anybody. I was just really afraid of what they were going to say. I got over it, but it was like, okay, well, there's no going back now. It was just really funny, but the story's not funny. I've gotten all kinds of feedback. There's a nuclear physicist that lives here, a really nice lady, very smart, and I gave it to her, and I said, well, "What did you think, Vicky?" And she said, "Well, Diane, it wasn't very entertaining, but I found it very interesting." And another lady who got off the elevator I'd never seen before, she said, "Diana, are you Diana Moon?" I said, "As far as I know, I am." And she said, "Well, I just finished reading your book." I said, "Great." I said, "Well, what did you think about it? What's your takeaway?" She said, "I don't know why you didn't walk away from your faith."
Hmm.
And I mean, we were just passing in the hall, and I said, "Well, I found what I was looking for." So the book just chronicles basically 7 decades of pretty much continuous, overlapping brokenness of any sort that you can think of. So it's an equal opportunity brokenness book.
What was the turnaround?
Well, I've been a believer all my life since I was 5, and I was born into chaos. And my grandmother, when I was 5, put me on her lap and told me about Jesus who loved me, and he was dependable, and I could count on him, and it didn't matter what was happening around me, but I could trust him. Well, I really grabbed onto that, and I took it to the bank. I grew up in a really wonderful church, and they infused me with the biblical truth. And so as I was writing all of this down, and at the end of each chapter, I just wind up in tears for a while, and I'd be arguing with God. I've had enough. This, how much are you going to put on one person? How much do you expect me to carry? Most of the time, I didn't get any answers. But what I know is that he loves me unconditionally, and that he is there, and that I'm helpless without him. and I've just learned to trust him, whether he answers me or not. I mean, I feel like a 21st century Job. He asked an awful lot of questions, and as far as I remember, he really never got an answer. But yet I may not have all the answers, but I know who.
Mhm.
I know who loves me unconditionally, and that makes all the difference.
English as a second language.
Yeah, I'm a creative developer, and the joy is in starting something new. So, my friend of mine, Terry Graham, she and I, we find areas of need that are sort of neglected or underserved, and we get up to speed. We recruit people to the project. We spend a little while training them. We launch it. We supervise it for 5 years. We find somebody to replace us, and say goodbye. And we go on to the next thing. Well, this ESL, English as a Second Language, was one of the things we started at our church. And it's been going for almost 25 years now. And it was a wonderful model at the time. And to make a very long story short, that program and the lady that we trained was embraced by the Presbyterian Church of America, their mission to North America, and she has been instrumental in starting hundreds, probably a couple of thousand ESL programs in church-based programs across the United States in the last, I don't know, 10 years. And so that's exactly what a creative developer is. They find a need, they figure out how to meet it, they recruit people to the vision, and then they launch them, and then you move on to the next thing. So after the ESL, uh, we just moved on to the next thing.
Disabled ministry. A lot of the people that are passionate about that are disabled themselves or have been directly impacted by a loved one. Uh, what's your story?
Well, I had the privilege of knowing Johnny Erickson Tata in high school before she broke her neck. And when she broke her neck, I just felt like the Lord, we were best friends. I felt like the Lord was calling me to walk that journey with her. And I did that for the first, from 1967 until 1979. And I learned an awful lot about all of this. And back then, there wasn't a whole lot written on it like there is now. And there was no Americans with Disabilities Act, and we've got a lot of stories to tell about that too. But a friend of ours, Steve Estes, and myself and Johnny, we would sit and just take a deep dive into the scriptures. And after a lot of doing that, Steve came up with one sentence that sort of answered the conundrum, and I added a little addendum on the end. And his conclusion was that God permits what he hates to accomplish what he loves for his glory and our good. Let me repeat that.
Yeah, please do. I was going to have you repeat it. That's a
Yeah,
good one.
God permits what he hates to accomplish what he loves. And I added for his glory and our good. And a perfect example of that is the crucifixion of Christ.
Mm.
God
Mm-hmm.
gave his only son to die in order that we would have eternal life. And it's a perfect example of how how he loves us, and how we can deal with these things that we don't understand. That if we're going to share in the fellowship of Christ's sufferings, like Philippians 3 says, and die to self, it's not by being delivered from these things. It's by allowing Christ to carry us through them. And then we intimately get to know him, and we tap into resurrection power, and we become more and more like him. And so this is not the kind of Sunday message that fills the pews or the offering plates, but this is where life meets the road.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where it is. This is real. Everybody suffers, everybody has brokenness, but it's not hopeless. It is not hopeless. It is, we are a people without hope. And the man of sorrows, acquainted with grief, has bought and paid for our redemption, and he is with us all the way. And be still and know that I am God. That's the answer when you haven't really got one.
Would you describe yourself as a serial entrepreneur?
Yes, I've started
I want
businesses.
you to think about that answer before
Yes, I know I am. I always have been. I've started for-profit businesses and non-profit businesses, and at school, and an art gallery and a picture framing shop and the ESL things. And Terry and I started a global transformation network in 2020, and so we went global with the disability trust, training trainers on how to be better advocates for people with disabilities around the world. They're just a forgotten group, and that also is a whole other story of exponential multiplication and through discipleship and vision casting, and it's just been a remarkable thing.
Now you talked about your book that you won an award, your award winning book now, and I don't know if you were writing those memoirs, if it was in your mind that I need to write this down so I can publish a book someday.
No, but I felt driven to finish it. When I was writing it, I was seeing the faces of people just like me
Hmm.
who were hopeless and helpless. They were alone. They were suffering silently, and they did not know where to go to get help. And I knew they were out there because that had happened to me for many, 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 many years. And I thought, well, God, if telling this story will help them seek you and find you in the mess of their lives and get relief from their suffering and find hope and strength and even joy in you, like James 1,
Hmm.
verse 2. Consider it pure joy, pure joy, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. I mean, he wants us to be joyful about this stuff. And for sure, you're not that way at first, but when you understand what God's intention is, his story is much better than mine. I would not have written my story this way. But this story has made me who I am, and I'm very grateful to him for it.
Well, you've written one book and it wins an award. You've been to one writers' conference. It's the granddaddy of them all. Um, Gosh, where do you go from here? But let's take a look back. You've co authored books and you've done some other writing.
Yes, I sort of was Johnny's, I don't know, chronicler, and we bound all that stuff together, and Johnny and Friends put that out in a book called Johnny Erickson Todd of the Early Years, and I was sort of the compiler, and I did many of the photographs. And then Terry and I produced another book, which was some of our adventure stories in Africa, and they're dangerous, they're funny, they're life threatening, they're touching, and we're doing a second edition of that, and I think people will be interested. Grandmoms who are trekking around the world for Christ in the hidden places of the world. And we've got a lot of adventures. It's never too late. It's never too late to respond to Christ claim on your life.
Well, I believe you because in talking with you earlier today off the air, you've been to one conference and you hear about all these things that you're supposed to do. You got a blog, you got to do a podcast, you got to do a video. And what's the future hold for Diana?
I want to write. I feel like God has given me an abundance of things to share, and He's blessed me so much. I want to encourage other people. I want to inspire other people that it's not too late. It doesn't matter who you are, what your talents are, whether you've been recognized or not, or whether you ever write a book or not. God has a plan for your life, and it's a wonderful plan, and it's not the same as the one as you had. But when you find it and discover it and follow it, it brings, as James says, pure joy.
I think that brings it home, and I'm just fascinated, Diana, that you have such a long list of achievements, accomplishments, and yet you're not done. And I believe that God is never done with us. Well, you'll know when God's done with you. Okay, you, you'll wake up with the streets will be lined with gold. Okay, that's how
Yes,
you'll know.
yes.
That's how you'll know God's done with you. But Diana, thank you for sharing all those experiences. Hard to cover or do justice to it in 20 minutes. Congratulations on your award-winning now book and works, and we just look for more great things to come as God uses you in service to His kingdom.
Thank you so much, Mark.
All right, that was Diana Mood here on pjnet.tv. And that's not all. In just a few moments, Michelle Medlock Adams is scheduled to join us. Now, I noticed she was traveling today. When you go on Facebook and there's a picture of her in an airplane showing that always makes me wonder, did her plane land? Is she, but anyway, but she is scheduled to be here at the bottom of the hour. So that's in a few minutes. So during that time, while we await her arrival, departure, or disembarkation, whatever it may be, she might be checking into her hotel room at this point. Who knows? Invest that time asking yourself these two questions. Here's the first one. What is the boldest thing that you've ever done for Jesus Christ? Second question. When was that? And the challenge is to never be satisfied with either answer.